Great. So we are live. Hello, Professor Gary Libecab. Cap, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How about you?
I'm great. And who are you? You are a distinguished professor. What are you known for? You are known for teaching us that America is rich because of mineral rights. I love that topic. The link between growth in America and mineral rights. What the hell is this again? Hi, you're back again.
Yes,
Nothing is wrong with the internet, I think your internet is okay because I can see and hear you and I can watch you move.
so Lipton, I don't know. This is not working very well.
Okay, what's
Uh,
the issue then? What's the issue with your computer?
I'm sorry.
What's the issue with your computer?
It's a new HP.
It's new. Okay, so it should be working well.
Yeah.
Well, because I have what well luckily no, both of us are able to speak and listen to each other. If it stops again, then I guess I'll have to talk to you on my computer via WhatsApp if you have WhatsApp.
No. Well, I don't know.
Okay, so
I
we
don't,
don't. So we have to use this then. We just have to use
yeah, let's
this.
just see what we can do here.
All right, good. N- Luckily for me, my audience is quite understanding because in the Zoom podcast space, things like this they happen all the time. So, Professor Leibcap, you are known for your research on mineral rights. What's unique about mineral rights in America?
Well, it's really more than mineral rights. It basically is the security of property across the board. And North America is loaded with minerals and land and timber and so forth. And the wonderful thing is that it was opened for private claiming by hundreds of thousands of small claimants. And those rights have been secure. So they've been able to invest, to sell, um, and to prosper. Capital markets have developed around secure property rights to land in particular. Um, and in general, this is a very important lesson. In a recent study with two other people, we compared the upper U.S. Midwest with a section of the Pampas in Argentina, where where we could control for uh, temperature, precipitation, soil quality, terrain, as well as crop suitability. These two areas competed in the same international markets. Everything is the same. The difference is and was that in the US, the property rights were secure. So you had all sorts of not only investment in agriculture, but in local public goods such as canals, railroads, highways, and especially in schooling. If for the comparable region in Argentina, you don't see that. What you see is less investment in infrastructure. You do see very productive land, and you see production in for the same international markets. But what's different is while the U.S. had a secure property rights system, basically coming out of Great Britain and the British common law, in Argentina, the property rights regime was based on Spanish colonial policies, which based huge estates, and these estates were important for not only economics but also for political and social status. And so they just didn't sell. So there's no comparable development of capital markets. And because these were big, whereas in the U.S. it was small farm family labor by and large, although some hiring of additional employees. But in Argentina, it was all the labor was supplied by short-term tenancy that was not renewable. So what you end up with is thousands of people without any secure tie to land except for these big owners of estancias. And so you end up with an agricultural labor force that becomes politicized. People move to Buenos Aires. Basically, it's the story of Argentina. It started out as one of the top countries in the world, really, in terms of
Oh God.
I can see you. Okay.
Yeah, so you said Argentina was one of the richest countries in the world.
And certainly by the 1930s, it was clearly on decline. And it's been basically and also ran ever since then. Um, so, uh, and since the resource base is very similar, the key thing is the differences in property rights. The government in Argentina has fluctuated based on political cycles, has been exploitive, it currently taxes exports. So I think that's a very good indication of the important role of property rights. In the US, in terms of mineral rights were written into federal law in the 1866 and 1872. And now I haven't done the study, but others have, and they compared the U.S. mineral rights situation to that in Mexico, where the rights had never been secured. And as a result, the U.S. has really produced beyond what its natural resource endowment would indicate, whereas Mexico is underproduced. And it's still like that way today. Latin America, with all of its resources, just underperforms relative to the U.S. and to some degree Canada.
But Professor Leibcap, I've always wondered, why don't other countries follow the US pathway? Why is it so difficult for them to adopt American style mineral rights?
Well, that's a very interesting question. So who adopts these rights and why? And in terms of the U.S., when migrants came over, they came over basically to improve their lot in life, and they did it through natural resources. And so they lobbied and pushed for laws that protected their rights and allowed their property rights to trade. If you don't have that kind of constituency or mobilization, you're not going to get them. So in Argentina as well as Latin America, the political elites are not served by the adoption of very tradable property rights because these could undermine their position. So it's and that I think you can call that rent seeking.
Yes.
They get favors through government and not through markets. It sets up very different incentives for the agents. So that I think that's. I mean, it sounds so simple.
It
But
does. It sounds really simple, but I'm from Jamaica, and I think that Jamaica should follow the U.S. model. I admire America's legislation. I think America has the best legislative framework in the world for business. Some people would disagree, but I still share that view.
well, yeah. Well, thank you. And it's. I mean, it's not my area to compare the U.S. with Europe, but it's my understanding, just the general data, is that Europe underperforms. It has a large and highly educated population.
Exactly my point.
Yeah, yeah. So hold on just a second. I'm going to shut a door.
Okay, not an issue. I don't know if you know this, but recently, like a few weeks ago, I was doing research online and I saw data, 21st century data, saying that even in the 21st century, I think 2024, the quality of science produced in the UK is superior to that of America.
Again. Oh, there
Yes.
was. Okay.
Yes, we're back. So now I was saying,
Yeah, yeah.
were you able to hear me about the quality of science being published in the UK?
I'm sorry.
I said even now in 2025, the quality of the science infrastructure in the UK is superior. The output is superior, but the UK has a problem with commercializing.
Yeah, well, they've had a very heavy-handed government. Didn't really matter whether it's the Tories or Labor, um, with a lot of regulations, a lot of taxes, and that's rent seeking. And once a society becomes focused on basically transferring funds back from one constituency to another, that becomes the game that people want to play rather than a one that's entrepreneurial. And so, uh, what you would hope in the U.S. is we would continue to emphasize entrepreneurship and advancement and so forth, and not slip into a more European UK model where the state plays a larger role in the economy, because you're not going to get economic growth in that regard.
Professor Leibcap, I want to talk to you about water rights. Should water be privatized? Walter Block has this book, Privatize Everything, and he likes to talk about water rights and privatizing water. And they have done some research on water rights. Is that feasible?
I'm sorry, what is your question about
water rights? Should
Yeah.
we privatize water? Is it feasible to establish rights in water?
Well, of course, I absolutely agree with that. I've been part of a number of studies comparing, so the Western US, Canada, Western Canada, Australia, New Zealand, parts of South Africa, those are Chile. Has government ownership. And the problem with that is water being what it is, so elemental and important. If it's privately owned and you need to shift water, as we do, for example, from low valued crops to higher valued crops, or from from one region to another and so forth. A water market facilitates that. It captures values. That can be totally undermined, and that doesn't exist in most of the world. So it's all going to be a political process, and then you get all the I wouldn't say that the water rights are as secure as they are in land. And that's sort of problematic. There are active water markets in different parts of the U.S. West. But there are also plenty of constituent parties that don't like that and would like to have more control over water. And so, for example, in California, certain amounts of water are basically taken for the environment. Now, I'm not saying the environment's not important, but if you're an environmentalist, it would be far better for you to buy that water or your group to buy that water. And then it wouldn't be controversial. In California, it's taken. And consequently, the incentives for water rights holders are basically to use all their water before somebody else takes it. And it also lowers the value. A good example of that is the difference between water prices north of the Sacramento Delta and south of the Sacramento Delta. Now, why should that matter? Well, there are 3 or so endangered species that live in the Sacramento Delta, none of which are likely to survive warmer temperatures. But that being said, they're endangered species. And so if somehow the flow of water is too low in the Sacramento Delta, movement across the Delta is halted. North of the Delta is where the water is. South of the Delta is where the demand is. So, and that's some of the most valuable agriculture in the world. So increasingly, water is blocked in terms of the flow across the Delta. And so prices are much higher south of the Delta than they are north of the Delta. And what that also means is, in terms of equity, no, okay.
No, you said, what does
Are you
that mean in
back?
terms of equity?
Okay, I'll finish up. And in any event, that they also don't buy farm equipment if they can't get water. So that hurts the local economy. And maybe more importantly, the hundreds of thousands, and I don't know the exact number, but there are a lot of poor farm workers that basically then are left unemployed, all because the water, you can't write a contract across the Delta that's enforceable in the face of the Endangered Species Act. So all that does is to answer your earlier question, why is the world rich? And the world isn't rich because property rights are not secure. And the latest Nobel Prize winners, Acemoglu, Robinson, and
Simon Johnson, was he? Yeah.
they all point to the role of institutions, and it's basically a property institution that's critical.
Yes. I like what you said, because institution it's quite airy theory in economics. People say institutions. What do you mean by institutions? Are you talking about the public sector, the private sector, or just property rights?
Well, okay, so we'll move quickly. Basically, the public sector or government sector is that, and there are things that government does that's important, certainly the provision of a stable money supply, national defense, um, inoculations for health, and education. Those don't have to be central in a federal, but local governments can do that. Not national defense and not the money supply, of course, but education. Uh, the private sector is just that. That's the economy. And that's where entrepreneurship takes place. That's where investment occurs. That's where, and the thing is, it has to be efficient, because if you waste resources, it's a profit opportunity for someone else to um, to buy whatever asset that you aren't using effectively. And that asset could actually be a pollution. If you want to reduce air pollution, you could actually, as Coase said, you could buy the right to pollute. You sign a property right, buy the right to pollute, and retire.
Yes, so Professor Lightcap, because
Yeah.
of the internet situation, we're going to wrap up soon. But before we wrap up, speak briefly about this paper you wrote recently, Shopping for Water. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Well, basically, what we were trying to document and emphasize is that, especially as the climate warms and precipitation becomes more variable, you want to manage water, allocate water efficiently. And as we've been saying, if this is done through the state regulatory process, it's going to impose all the politics, all the rent seeking, all the things we're familiar with. And that's the world. Most of the world's like that. Importance of markets and secure property rights in water.
All right. Thanks for your time. I just wish the internet was a bit more effective. I had so much to say.
Nice talking with you. Where are you located?
I'm in the UK now, so I was born in Jamaica, but I'm in the UK now.
Oh, okay. All right. No wonder. Well, best to you and best of luck to the UK. I want it to do well. Um, and I want you to do well. So thanks so much.
Of course. So thanks. Well, I know your research, but what about your books?
What about what book?
Books. How many books have you written? So, bye, guys. Unfortunately, the internet gave us some problems. And